Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going into the 5th episode of our story in which Naruto befriends Sasuke and Sakura at a young age through a stroke of fate. The three then set a goal to surpass the Sannin as the strongest shinobi team and uncover a mystery about Naruto's heritage that extends beyond the limits of the elemental nations, altering the course of history forever. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel after you watch the video. Let's get started. Konoha Hospital 1800 hours, 3 days after the Uchiha massacre. For days before the Cloud Revolution, Naruto sat near his unconscious, but alive, sensei, his eyes filled with regret and uselessness. Sakura and Sasuke had gone out to get some food for the three of them, while he had stayed behind to watch over the woman he had come to love as a mother. The three shinobi in training barely said a word to each other throughout the whole week, outside of necessity. They were still recovering from the trauma of seeing their sensei being nearly killed by Sasuke's older brother. Thinking of Itachi made Naruto's blood boil and he clenched his fists in barely suppressed rage. What he had done was completely unforgivable. He breathed in and out to calm himself down, taking some notes from his sensei. The blonde looked down at the Uchiha widow with blurred vision as memories of the night they brought her here, barely alive, came flooding back to him. Mikoto's pupils were in a desperate situation of trying to reach the hospital in time. Sasuke and Naruto were both supporting their unconscious mother. Jumping from rooftop to rooftop, they eventually saw an all-white building with a red cross in sight. The trio landed outside of the hospital doors and the two boys gently laid her down. "Sakura-chan. Go in and tell them the situation. Sasuke and I will make sure we didn't cause her bleeding to get any worse," Naruto quickly ordered, taking control of the situation as best as he could, anyhow. "But, Naruto-kun, shouldn't we dash?" Sakura began before the 9-year-old cut her off. "Damn it, Sakura-chan, just do it. We don't have time to argue, we need to save our sensei," he retorted, back a bit irritated, though not at the rosette-haired girl. Sakura nodded and ran into the hospital doors, which slid open automatically, sensing her presence. Naruto turned back to his sensei and carefully examined her. He saw Sasuke grit his teeth as he inspected his mother as well. "Damn. This isn't good. Whatever Itachi did to her, he cut her deep," Naruto intoned solemnly. Sasuke nodded. "It seems her flak jacket took a good bit of the blow," the Uchiha scion observed, before fresh blood seemed to pour out of the elder Uchiha. Both boys' eyes widened. Sasuke immediately put both hands over the chest wound to add some pressure to stop some form of bleeding. "Damn. Naruto, help me out here." Naruto didn't need to be told twice as he put both of his hands on top of Sasuke's, to assist in adding pressure. "Oh, Sakura-chan, where the fuck are you?" Naruto cursed as his hands were starting to turn red from the overflowing crimson liquid flowing out of Mikoto's body. As if on cue, Sakura ran out of the doors with several medical shinobi. One was carrying a stretcher. "We'll take it from here, boys," one medic spoke seriously as he crouched down to examine the unconscious adult. The bewhiskered Jinchuriki hesitated a bit, but reluctantly let go, as did his raven-haired best friend. The trio of medical shinobi gently lifted her off the ground and set her in the stretcher. "Please, sir, save my mother," Sasuke practically begged as he felt tears welling up from within. "We will do our best," the lead one promised as they hurriedly carried Mikoto to the emergency room. The trio of shinobi in training looked at each other in solemn reflection of the night's events, before slowly walking towards the doors. All three were completely unsure of what to say to each other. The slow stride towards the emergency room ward of the hospital was completely agonizing. All around them, they saw patients, some well, some not. It wasn't bursting with life and activity, but it wasn't quiet and desolate either. The blonde could barely contain himself as he saw the sick patients as they passed by. "Mikoto-sensei, please don't die. For the love of the gods, please don't die." The Kyuubi was silent as he listened to the boy's innermost thoughts, which Naruto subconsciously projected to himself. Even he, as malevolent and deceptive as he was, couldn't help but feel mild sympathy for the boy. The Vulpine growled in contempt at the eldest Uchiha. Damned Uchiha! Just when I thought your clan couldn't sink any lower, you deplorable bastards prove me wrong, yet again. Disgraceful, he spat in complete disgust. Although he hated the Uchiha clan, even the fox had standards. Killing one's own kin? That took a special kind of evil. He snorted at the irony of him thinking that. He bared all of his fangs. I will look forward to your death, Uchiha Itachi. Those three will hunt you down to the ends of the earth for what you've done to their mother. Yes, even the Nine-Tails had long since accepted that Mikoto was more than just a sensei to the three, especially, or more importantly, rather, to his vessel. As far as he was concerned, she was Naruto's mother, nothing more and nothing less. A small, uncharacteristic grin adorned the Kyuubi's face. Kushina. You would be proud. Sakura took each boy's hand and gave it a squeeze for reassurance for her or them, she was entirely unsure. They both looked at her and nodded grateful. The three best friends walked hand in hand without a single care in the world at the shot-up eyebrows they got from the staff members. A cacophony of noises could be heard as Naruto picked up on frantic voices from around the corner. The cerulean-eyed 9-year-old gently let go of Sakura's hand and ran around the corner, leaving his two friends behind. He came around just in time to see several doctors dressed in surgeon attire shut the door behind them. A light bulb above the door glowed red, indicating occupied. There was no doubt in his mind that his mother was in there, clinging on to dear life. He clenched his chest as if he was in pain, and tears he had been holding in the entire ordeal threatened to fall all at once. The blonde refused utterly to let them, though. I can't lose her. She's the only adult who ever took the time to get to know me, aside from Iruka-sensei and Hokage-sama. He thought in bitter sadness as he nearly collapsed to his knees and used the wall for support. Look at me, he chastised himself, gritting his teeth. I'm supposed to be the leader of us. Sasuke and Sakura-chan look to me to take charge. I've always happily accepted that role and knew what to do in nearly every situation Ka-san put us in Buthus. I don't know what to do. I don't know, he voiced his thoughts in a piercing screech. He felt a pair of arms wrap around his abdomen and his eyes widened in surprise. With a sniff, he turned his head to see rosette-colored hair. Sakura squeezed tight and buried her head in the upper base of his back. Please Naruto-kun, it's okay. You don't have to carry the burden alone, she spoke softly and firmly. Although her voice was soft, Naruto heard her clearly. He was visibly shaking afterwards. Sakura-chan, I am supposed to be the team leader helping you guys, not me. Shut up. You shut up right now, she chided, raising her voice several decibels. The blonde visibly flinched at her outburst. Look at me. Naruto closed his eyes and actually turned away from the youngest of the trio, essentially denying her request. Naruto-kun, look at me, she repeated, this time with much more firmness. He took a deep breath and slowly turned around as his cerulean eyes stared into her jade. She caressed his whiskered cheeks with both of her hands soothingly, as she was crying too. It's okay, you can cry. I know you're the team leader, but that does not mean you don't get to grieve, she assured him. But he tried to protest, but she shushed him by pressing her index finger on his lips. She's right, Naruto, came the voice of Sasuke as the blonde now noticed his appearance. He looked at him in surprise. Was he there the entire time? Sasuke, Naruto spoke softly as he stared in the solemn-filled onyx eyes of his raven-haired best friend. Sakura squeezed him tightly in her embrace. See, Naruto-kun. Even Sasuke-kun agrees. You don't have to carry this alone. Just let it out. That did it. That statement shattered all of his mental and physical defenses almost instantaneously. Copious amount of tears flowed down his cheek, as the Jinchuriki didn't just cry, he practically wept. Sakura-chan's my mother, he wept, sniffing heavily as his knees nearly collapsing, almost as if the letting it out was weighing him down. Sasuke embraced Sakura from the side, as well as his best friend to aid in support. I know, Sakura soothed as she grieved with him as well. She's more of mother to me than my own mom, she sympathized. She knew exactly where the blonde was coming from and then some. Ka-san, came the simple reply from the Uchiha Scion, worriedly. He looked towards the ceiling. If there are any gods out there then please save our Ka-san, he sent out a silent prayer. Soon their sobs turned into mild sniffs, but the trio of best friends stayed in each other's arms for comfort of each other. A cough got the three's attention, as medical ninja, one Naruto recognized as one of the doctors he saw walk in a while back. The three separated, not in the least bit embarrassed at being caught in their position. They had far more important things to worry about. He cleared his throat. My name is Sakamaru, he introduced himself. I take it you three are here for Mikoto-san, he asked politely, his expression and tone kept as neutral as he possibly could. Naruto swallowed hard, breathed in, and wiped the tears from his cheek. He stepped up, yet again, to assume a leadership-like position. Yes, we are. He gulped. Sakamaru-san, please tell me she's going to be okay, he pleaded with a worried expression on his face. Sakamaru sighed and took another breath. I have good news and bad news, unfortunately, kids. Each of them held their breaths. The good news is, we've stabilized her and have stopped the bleeding. She was a hair away from needing a blood transfusion. Thankfully it didn't come to that. She'll make a full recovery when she wakes up. The three shinobi in training let tears of joy fall down their faces, as they felt relieved at hearing that. Thank you so much. Sakamaru smiled a bit, but then frowned. But I am afraid I have bad news as well. As I said, Mikoto-san will make a full recovery, when she wakes up. The problem is we don't when that will be, he revealed, dropping the bombshell. All three of their eyes widened. Are you saying my mother is in dash? Sasuke began, before Sakamaru cut him off. Yes, he nodded. She's in a coma. After what she went through, I'm not all that surprised. This may be her body's way of dealing and sorting out the trauma so it doesn't overwhelm her at once. It's not common, but it's not unheard of either. He put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. We'll do our best to make sure she's cared for. You three will be allowed to visit at any time. I'll allow it. Thank you, Sakamaru-san, Sakura thanked the medic ninja. He gave a curt bow and excused himself from their presence. With a sigh, Naruto was brought back to the present as he stared at the woman he had come to call his Ka-san. He clenched his fists, yet again. Itachu, son of a bitch, he cursed in anger, slamming a fist into a palm. He heard the door open and shifted his eyes to see his two best friends come in with food. His eyes shifted back to Mikoto, preferring not to say anything. Naruto-kun, we got your favorite. Chicken ramen, Sakura chimed with a small smile. She was met with complete silence as Naruto barely acknowledged her presence or even indicating that he had heard her at all. Sakura frowned disapprovingly and set the rest of the stuff she had on a nearby table, clearly annoyed. Damn it, why won't you say something to us? She asked in both hurt and frustration, as she refused to cry again. Not now, at least. Naruto grunted and turned to them and stood near them, clearly annoyed. Because I can't help but worry about Ka-san, he practically yelled out. That did it. That earned him a right hook, courtesy of the Uchiha Scion. Naruto was caught so off guard, that his abnormal reflexes did nothing to help in the situation, as Sasuke pinned him to the wall, looking furious. Okay, I'm tired of this fucking shit, Sasuke snarled, not even trying to hide his anger and annoyance. You've been doing this all week. All fucking week, he roared. Naruto did nothing to get out of his position despite easily having the ability to do so. All week, you've been barely acknowledging our existence and you've been stuck in this state since the massacre. Now Naruto turned to him. Well, excuse me for worrying about our Ka-san and wanting nothing more than to don't. You fucking dare, Sasuke growled dangerously. Don't you dare insinuate that we don't care and don't want nothing more than to get revenge on Itachi. Naruto was about to protest, but a glare from Sasuke shut him up. Is that what you think? That this does not affect us? Really? That was my whole fucking clan, Naruto. Sasuke yelled as tears began to roll down his face. Don't think you're the only one grieving. Believe me, so are we. I honestly thought about becoming revenge-obsessed and only training to get strong enough to avenge my clan, he admitted. But then I thought about you too. The best friends a guy could ever have. What good would a revenge quest done me? It won't bring them back. And I'd probably feel even worse considering, even though I'm very well justified in it, I'd be no better than Itachi by killing him, so what's the point? He then sighed and let his grip on the blonde a bit looser. Now that being said, if I did get the chance to face Itachi so he could atone for his sins, would I? Yes, he then smiled. But I'd have the two of you beside me. You mean Naruto began, before he was cut off. Yes. This time it was Sakura who decided to speak up. We will face Itachi together. Naruto stared at the two in pure bewilderment. Here it was that he was moping and groaning, and his two best friends were trying to settle the war within them. Even after that night, he'd still, subconsciously, had placed the burden on himself. The blonde wanted blood, vengeance, anything to cling to make sure that one day he would end Itachi's life for nearly killing his mother. Although there was still a part of him that honestly wanted revenge, he'd have to push that aside. For now at least. The Jinchuriki held his head in shame, as Sasuke let go of him. I'm sorry guys, I was just so focused on Ka-san, that I temporarily forgot who I could rely on the most. He then gave them a small smile. I guess, I was still trying to carry the burden all by myself again. Sakura smiled and hugged the blonde, which he happily returned. Neither of the two noticed Sasuke's slight frown, as it was gone almost the minute it appeared on his face. So together? Together, they all nodded in agreement. Each of them knew in their hearts, that they would face Itachi as a team and a family. No one had to carry the burden of revenge alone, but they wouldn't collectively hold vengeance at the forefront of their minds either. They would simply get stronger and simply wait till the time was right. I'm so glad you three could work it out. The entire trio froze completely in their tracks as their eyes widened to their greatest extent as they heard a completely familiar voice. Slowly, they turned their heads around to see the Uchiha matriarch sitting up a bit, giving them a very weak smile. She was breathing heavily, clearly still exhausted. The four individuals just stared at each other for a solid 30 seconds until, Ka-san/sensei, they all cried out in unison as Mikoto was nearly tackled back to the bed in a collective group hug, embracing her tightly. Mikoto ignored the initial pain and hugged the pupils who had become like children to her, as tightly as her strength allowed. I'm so glad you three are safe, Mikoto told them, crying tears of gratitude. I thought he would kill you three when he knocked me unconscious. I couldn't help but think the worse. It would have been my biggest regret, she choked out. Sensei, we're fine. Itachi didn't harm us at all. He vanished the moment he knocked you unconscious with that attack, Sakura explained. We were just focusing on saving you and we brought you to the hospital. You've been out for nearly 3 days in a coma, Naruto continued, his face showing absolute happiness that his surrogate other was awake and going to be okay. Mikoto simply smiled. Thank you, you three, she thanked with absolute earnest. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. All three let go of the tight hug, but still kept in close proximity to her. Believe me, Ka-sanway don't know either. The past 3 days have been difficult to say the least, Sasuke frowned. The elder Uchiha nodded with as much understanding as she could. I can imagine. I am sorry I wasn't here to help you through it, she apologized with complete sincerity. Naruto shook his head. Don't be. Truth be told, we were focused on you, we didn't see much else, thankfully. That was true. The trio of shinobi in training had followed Mikoto's chakra signature exactly. They saw virtually none of the bodies of the Uchiha clan, save for the clan head. So in some sense, they were spared from the complete horrors of the Uchiha clan massacre. There was no telling what type of emotional instabilities they each would have went through if they saw just how far the Uchiha prodigy went in his genocide. Mikoto sighed in complete relief. That's good. You guys may be in training, but even you are too young to see that. She willed herself to sit up more, pain be damned. Booty no things are going to be different now, she said as a look of grief and pain flashed through her eyes, as the memory of seeing her husband's freshly rotting corpse came right back to her. She visibly cringed, involuntarily shut her eyes, and placed both her hands over her heart. Sensei? Sakura inquired with a frown. Just give me a moment, Sakura, she pleaded to the pink-haired kunoichi, biting her lip. All three looked on solemnly as the Uchiha matriarch took several deep breaths, before silently breaking down in grief over her fallen husband. There was no screaming, shrieking, or wailing. Just silently weeping. The three could only embrace her as she sobbed. X0. X, Hokage's tower, same time, Hiruzen watched the scene unfold with a heavy heart through his crystal ball. Truth be told, he was honestly surprised that Mikoto woke up as fast as she did considering the amount of injuries she had. The gods above must have sensed that her children needed her, the third fire shadow deduced aloud. He could sympathize with the matriarch almost wholeheartedly. When he had lost his wife decades ago, he felt completely hollow inside. Almost as if something from within had been forcefully ripped out and trampled on. He would be too prideful to admit it, but some part of him did seriously consider taking his own life in order to escape the painful void. Thankfully, however, he had the support of his family to help him cope. It wasn't to say that he didn't miss Biwako, but he had long moved on from that episode in his life. However, that wasn't the most truly depressing to the Hokage. No, what was most tragic was that Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura had sworn to take revenge on Itachi for the crime he had committed. The Sandaime knew the grim and unfortunate truth. In truth, Itachi had saved the entirety of the elemental nations from plunging into another bloody conflict that would threaten to tear the continent entire apart again. Hiruzen clenched his fists in remorseful anger. The man was as wise as it came. He knew the arduous roads and twists that life could throw at you. That absolutely nothing in life was even remotely fair. Being a shinobi, a kage at that, he would have known this absolutely better than almost anyone. However, even with this wisdom and knowledge, even the old monkey couldn't help feel a bit resentful at the gods putting such a painful burden on the shoulders of one of, if not the most selfless ninja he had served under him. Damn it, he cursed uncharacteristically, slamming his fist on his desk in regret. With a bit of irritation, he looked through his desk to find nothing. Damn. He must have drank all the sake he had in his desk when he took his desires away last night. The Sarutobi clan head sighed and rubbed his temples in frustration, both with the circumstances and with himself. He was never like this. Why the hell was he turning into a mad drunk? He had faced countless shinobi, fought in not one, not two, but 3, shinobi world wars and lived to tell the tale. Hiruzen had seen and done things that would make lesser men weep to their heart's content. Through it all, never turned to the bottle till now. How could he, who still retained his sanity even throughout all of the wars and conflict he's fought in, turn to it now? Of course he knew the answer. He just didn't like to admit it. Or rather, he didn't want to admit it. The third fire shadow knew that he could have prevented all of this had he not been a blind fool and thought of his sensei as infallible. He knew the law was wrong, he knew that eventually bubble had to burst at some point, and he knew that rebellion was inevitable. And Yeath did nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. Even the so-called god of shinobi could make mistakes that reminded him just how mortal he truly was. Am I truly a coward, unable to do things because I lacked spine and conviction like you used to claim, Danzo? Hiruzen asked to no one in particular as his eyes drifted downwards in melancholy and self-doubt. I couldn't even stand up for my own convictions that treating a noble clan with scorn was wrong. I did nothing and now I'm reaping what I sowed. He closed his eyes and breathed in and out. A 14-year-old teenager, he sent. A 14-year-old kid. To slaughter the very family that raised him from birth, all to keep his mistakes and sins from coming to the light. It was at that moment, the Hokage knew just how emotionally vulnerable he was. The professor had built up so many walls and mental blocks to cope with all of the pent-up guilt and remorse over his long 6 decades of being a shinobi. Now it seemed Itachi's genocide had shattered that last fortress, and an invasion of every traumatic memory seemed to storm the castle grounds of his mind and consciousness. Now, it seemed that Itachi would pay for his mistakes twofold. Not only did he have the killing of his own kin on his conscience despite how justified it was, he now was going to be hunted down to the ends of the earth by the Golden Trio, as the academy instructors nicknamed them. True, they weren't even close to his power, but considering Naruto's lineage, Sasuke's genius, and Sakura's resolve, he had no doubt they would close the gap soon. What made matters worse was that he couldn't reveal the truth, not to them. Not to anyone, really. For one, if the populace knew, as a whole, that the Uchiha were planning a rebellion and they were cleansed because of it, this would create discourse and general mistrust of all clans within the village and create a subtle, yet unmistakably noticeable divide between civilian shinobi, civilians, and finally clan ninja themselves. That kind of discord wouldn't go unnoticed abroad. Villages had been known to start wars over the most mundane of things, and a political polarization of doubt and distrust of the leadership and clans would be the perfect moment to strike right at the base of the tree. In a sense, Itachi's sacrifice would be in absolute vain. It was the classic lose-lose situation. Some Hokage I am, he said dejectedly. Even with all my vast knowledge of jutsu I'm still just human. Hiruzen wouldn't admit it to absolutely anyone, but the titles and nicknames he got over his career made him feel proud. Almost to the point of arrogance, even. How could he not? He was raised to be humble man, but when your strength was so revered that you're referred to be a deity among your profession in comparison to others, no man, no matter how modest, couldn't feel slightly above your peers, even if it was a subconscious sentiment. The Uchiha prodigy had brought him down completely to earth, and just showed just how ungodly he was. He may have once been that powerful, but as his power withered age, so did his rationale and judgment. On the whole, yes, he was wiser brutally, was he? Had he grown so complacent that he decided he could wipe the Uchiha clan out if need be if they dared plan a rebellion? He scoffed. Of course he had. There was no other explanation of how he could let the kettle boil almost to a tipping point. He should have turned off that stove the minute it was set over the eye. He then leaned back and sighed once more. I guess what's done is done, he reasoned with himself for the moment. I may have failed the Uchiha. But, he looked toward the crystal ball towards the surrogate family that consisted of Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke and Mikoto Uchiha, and finally, Sakura Haruno. I will not fail on you three. Even if it costs me my life, I will make sure you three will end on the path of being the legendary shinobi I see before me. I owe you all at least that much. I will not let you take on my sins, I will pay for them in the next life, he vowed with genuine resolve. A knock on his door interrupted his monologue and his brief time to think in solitude. He put away his crystal ball, lit his pipe and told the person to come in. The door opened to reveal Danzo, who had a grim expression on his face. Danzo, he uttered neutrally, his face completely impassive as he huffed a smoke. He honestly didn't want to deal with him at the moment, and would have preferred if the man had just left him be. He honestly hated feeling that way, but there was a part of him that would never fully trust his old rival. Not in this lifetime or the next. The crippled veteran crossed the threshold and spoke seriously. Hiruzen, I am afraid I have troubling news, he uttered grimly. The fire shadow raised a single brow, if only slightly. He knew that tone of voice. Danzo didn't just find the news grim, found it outright terrifying. Not only that, but he hadn't put up a sound barrier jutsu. That only meant what he was about to say was either going to become public, or rather there was no point in trying to hide it. A subconscious sense of dread filled his being. "What is it?" he inquired, just having a feeling of what he was about to hear wasn't going to please him at all. Danzo took a deep breath. The ultranationalists have taken over Kumogakure. The Raikage is dead and their Jinchuriki are currently listed as K.I. by the newly installed government, he replied bluntly, getting straight to the point. Sarutobi's heart skipped 2 beats, as his eyes widened in complete shock. He practically fell out of his chair in disbelief. It then turned to anger. "You want to run that by me, one more time, Danzo?" he roared, and his breaths became hot, large and irregular in their patterns. Danzo sighed, expecting this. Normally, he would have engaged the Kage in a mind game, but now was most definitely not the time nor place for that. The ultranationalists staged a successful coup and overthrew the Raikage, and the villagers sided with them. As of now, I can likely confirm the populace as a whole share the same ideology as the ultranationalist party, he repeated the bombshell. Hiruzen took the pipe out of his mouth and crushed it to pieces in his hand. Danzo looked a bit disturbed and alarmed. Was his old rival mentally breaking down? He never showed these traits before. Are you kidding me right now? Are the gods simply screwing with me? Them? Of all people? He stood up and slammed his fist on the desk. Itachi's sacrifice was in vain. We felt we did what we had to do in order to prevent war, and now, that war is practically guaranteed now. God damn it. Danzo looked at him critically and seriously. I know we may have our differences, but Hiruzen nodded. We have to work together if Konoha is to survive the coming storm. To be frank, Danzo, I don't like you. Nor will I ever fully trust you. But if working with you means this village is safe, then so be it. The root leader bowed his head in acquiescence, indicating the feeling was completely and unquestionably mutual. The Hokage looked out towards the village solemnly. It seemed this village would be at war for the 4th time. He sighed. So I take it Hideyoshi will be the Raikage, now, he deduced bitterly. No, Danzo replied with a frown. His rival turned swiftly around in confusion. What? How could he not? He's been the leader of those genocidal lunatics. Who would take the mantle if not him? Aisu Hayasaka, Danzo replied bluntly, yet again. Hiruzen froze on the spot. What did you say? He asked as his eyes narrowed. Aizua's and the former commander of the village's Bolt division, he replied grimly. He looked at the Hokage's semi-neutral expression in wonder. You don't seem surprised, he observed. To Danzo, when he found out Aisu Hayasaka was the true leader of the ultranationalists, he was thrown completely for a loop, not expecting that possibility as remotely probable. Yet, his old rival was taking it rather well, relatively speaking. I'm not, Hiruzen admitted as he sat down. Komogakuriso, that's where you went. Isuiven, now does your hatred still consume you? I had hoped you would have turned out for the better, even in light of your unfortunate circumstances, and let go of your extreme animosity, but alas, you did not. He added in his head, clearly pitying the new appointed Raikage for unknown reasons. Danzo narrowed his eyes suspiciously, and Hiruzen had already had an answer prepared, knowing exactly where the root leader was heading the conversation. Why exactly, I'm not surprised, doesn't matter. All that I know is that Aisu will stop at nothing to bring the entire elemental nations under his control. That much I'm assured of. This conflict just got a whole lot more complicated. Danzo sensed that tone immediately and Hiruzen's subtle implication. You do not think you can defeat him in battle? It wasn't a rhetorical question. Just an observation of fact. Hiruzen stayed silent for a half a minute at least before replying to him. I will do what I must do to defend the village. Even my very life if need be, he replied, neither confirming nor denying his accusation. I see, Danzo said flatly. There was nothing more that needed to be said on the matter. The two veterans understood one another in ways that no one, not even Koharu and Hamura, could comprehend. They knew each other inside out almost as if they were the best of friends, but in truth, they held mutual distrust and enmity towards the other. It was one of the most complex dichotomies of either of their lives. The Hokage breathed out a breath of smoke. In any case, we have no choice but to prepare for war. But we have to do it subtly. We can't have the public panic attack, nor can we give the hidden cloud a reason to start the war prematurely. This was Hiruzen's way of asking Danzo, do you have any ideas? Danzo smirked. And I know the perfect way to do so. Hiruzen grimaced, not liking the Cheshire Cat smirk on the crippled veteran's face. He just knew that, somehow, he was going to regret this. Oh, well. He likely wouldn't live to feel that way anyhow, as sad as it was to admit. Both had a duty as Hokage, and by the gods he was going to do it no matter what the cost. X0. Back in the hospital, after a solid 15 minutes or so, the Uchiha widow's weeping had finally come to a close. However, that being said, she was still holding on to her 3 surrogate children for dear life. The 3, however, didn't mind. Are you feeling better, even just a little bit, Ka-san? Sasuke asked, a bit hopeful, looking up at his mother. Mikoto swallowed a bit and breathed out before giving her son a small smile. Yes, Sasuke-kun. I do feel a bit better, she told him. The other 2 smiled back and let go of her, albeit with some reluctance. She looked at the trio. Once I'm out of here and back to normal, we'll go back to your training, she promised with a slight grin. They collectively blinked. But sincere, you sure? I mean, we'd be fine just training on our own while you recover. Sakura started to say, before Mikoto put up her hand silencing her. No. I need to do this. For the 3 of you and myself. I'm not going to allow my grief to interfere with the promise I made you 3. I completely refuse. If I have to grieve, then I will. But, until then, we shall press on harder than before, she explained seriously. Naruto nodded in acceptance. If you're sure you want us to train, then, he gave her his trademarked fox-like grin. Then hell yeah, we shall. The rosette-haired girl smiled to herself. The Naruto she knew was coming back. It's about damn time, Naruto-kun. Sasuke simply smirked. Well, Naruto, if you're so eager, count me in too. Naruto bobbed his head towards his 2 friends and then looked at them both seriously. Could you guys give us some privacy? I'd like to talk to Sensei. Alone, he pleaded toward them. They both gave him extremely confused looks, perplexed by his request. What could he possibly want to talk to Mikoto about, that he couldn't say in front of them? They had been best friends for the past year, give or take a few weeks. But, Naruto-kun, why do we ? Sakura began, worry tracing her voice before their sensei interrupted them. Mikoto shook her head. No. It's okay, Sakura-chan. If Naruto wants to talk to me alone, you 2 should respect that. After all, he respected your right when you withheld the truth until you were completely comfortable in telling us, she reminded her sternly. The pink-haired girl winced a bit at her slight hypocrisy. I see you're right, sensei. He did. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, she apologized. The Jinchuriki waved her off with a smile. It's okay, Sakura-chan, he replied earnestly. She smiled and grabbed Sasuke's arm. Come on, Sasuke-kun. We obviously aren't needed here, so let's go and do something, she cheerfully suggested. The raven-haired Uchiha blushed a bit, and nodded in acquiescence. Naruto narrowed his eyes ever so slightly, a sight that did not get past his sensei, frowning a bit briefly. There was brief feeling of dread in the pit of her stomach, which she knew all too well. If she didn't address that soon, it would not end well. Sakura practically dragged Sasuke out of the hospital room to do God knows what. Naruto shook his head, sighing a bit. "So Naruto-kun, what did you want to talk about?" she inquired, looking a bit weary, but yet, ready to understand if need be. The blonde took in a deep breath, walked up toward her bed, and sat on the stool he was sitting on a half an hour earlier up. He rested his elbows on the mattress and interlocked his fingers. He gazed up at his sensei softly. "Mikoto-sensei," Naruto began after a brief moment of comfortable silence. "My life wasn't exactly the greatest. I've been shunned, scorned, ignored, and practically had my childhood robbed from me. When some of the villagers look at me, they don't see Naruto. They don't see a kid just trying to prove his worth and carry his own weight. They don't see a child who didn't have any parents growing up who could have raised him in the right direction." Mikoto's heart clutched painfully when he said this, and she pursed her lips to keep her emotions under control. "No. They only saw me as a reminder of what they lost 10 years ago. It hurt. It really did. Being a social outcast, not knowing why you were disliked and ignored. I thought I'd never get the acknowledgement that I wanted. As much as I put up a front towards the village during my pranks, I was slowly losing hope. Sure, I had Iruka-sensei and Hokage-sama, but..." His eyes shifted towards the left, away from her in sorrow. "Even they weren't enough. I couldn't relate to them on a personal level other than the fact they didn't ignore me and helped me out from time to time. One day, I was doing one of my routine pranks and all of the frustration I had just came out when Iruka-sensei lectured me. I stomped off and went to a random forest near the outskirts of the village." Mikoto's eyes went wide a bit in surprise. "So that's where you met Sasuke-kun and Sakura-chan," she deduced. Naruto smiled and nodded in the affirmative. "Yes. I did. All three of us bonded that night. To an outside third party, it might seem as if we just came out of the blue and were friends, just like that. In hindsight, I could probably see where they were coming from. But there was something, I don't know what it was, but there was something that connected all three of us together. Fated destiny, call it what you like. I honestly couldn't care less. Because of that night, my life has changed for the better. Most of all though, it's because of you." Mikoto was taken back in shock. "Me," she stuttered out, stunned. Was he really going where she thought he was going with this? Naruto nodded again, his eyes watering, tears threatening to fall once more. "Because of you, I am where I am. You've taught me everything I know now. I've always wanted to be a great shinobi and you set me up for success, and never allowed me to give up. You taught me how to be a swordsman, an aspiration of mine that I've wanted to be since I was very young. I'm stronger, faster, more tactical and calculating." The Uchiha matriarch was speechless, as Naruto continued on unperturbed. "But that's not what I'm most grateful for," Naruto uttered softly, looking her straight in the eye. "You've taught me humility, how to protect those I care about, and you always were honest with me, not sugarcoating a damn thing. You treat me and Sasuke equally the same, and I see him as the brother I never had. That's what I want to tell you. You're the mother I've always dreamt of having." "And then some," Naruto admitted as the tears flowed freely, yet again. Mikoto's eyes went wide, stunned yet again. "So Senseiken, I have the honor of you being my Ka-san?" he humbly asked the Uchiha female, who was currently crying tears of absolute joy. She had her doubts about Muramesa's words, but the wise old man proved to be right, yet again. Mikoto pulled the boy into a tight embrace and the blonde buried his head into her chest. "Of course, Naruto-kun," she practically cheered out in a bliss. "Yes, I'd be honored. You have no idea how long I've waited for this moment." He turned his head to look up towards her. "Really?" She nodded and put her chin over the crown of his head. "Yes, Naruto-kun. I've felt like your mother for a long time now. I just wanted the ball to be in your court." That caused Naruto to smile. Thank you for everything, Kasan, Naruto told her with absolute gratitude. Just hearing him call her that, caused Mikoto to tighten her grip on him, not wanting to let him go. You're welcome, Esaki, son, Mikoto replied back with a smile. Kushina-chanyo would be so proud. The two sat content in each other's arms for the next 10 minutes in comfortable silence. The only sound in the entire room was Mikoto's soothing touches of the blonde. Naruto-kun, Mikoto called out, breaking the silence. Yes, Ka-san, he replied back. I think you should tell both Sasuke-kun and Sakura-chan, she told him seriously without missing a beat. He pulled away from her and sighed with a frown. I know, Ka-san, but I am not sure, he said honestly. Mikoto gripped her son's shoulder tightly and looked at him straight in the eye. You need to. The longer you wait, the worse off it will be. She's right, kid. I seriously doubt they'd reject you because of me. The three of you have been through too much for them to throw it away simply because you have a 15-story tall fox in your gut, the Kyuubi advised. Naruto sighed. Wow, even the furball agrees with you, Mikoto smiled. Yes, even the fur. Wait a minute, she cried out in horror, as the implications of what her son said finally sunk in. You can talk to it, she gasped out in sheer surprise. He, both Naruto and the Kyuubi growled out at the same time, although, obviously, Mikoto couldn't hear the famed bijou. The fox is a he, Ka-san. I'd prefer you not to call him an it again. He, and quite frankly so do I, find it utterly insulting. So I'd appreciate if you didn't refer to him as if he weren't a sentient being, he told his mother sternly, but gently as well as to not show disrespect. Though the blonde couldn't see him, the fox nodded approvingly. Mikoto blinked and then slowly nodded with as much understanding as possible. Okay him, then. You can talk to him, she inquired yet again. Not only can I talk to him, I do so on a daily basis, he admitted. Mikoto looked a bit alarmed. Naruto held his hands up defensively. Whoa, please don't become alarmed, Ka-san. I know it might not seem like it, Bud's really not that bad of a guy. He destroyed a seal that was hindering my mental capacity. Mikoto's eyes widened completely. What? A seal? Hindering your mental capacity? And he destroyed it? How? When? So many questions were running through her head. Calm down. Please, he begged her. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down at least a little bit. This was a lot to take in. Yes, have you heard of a cognitive chakra suppression seal? Mikoto rubbed her chin in thought. I can't say that I have. However, it does sound familiar, though the details are lost on me at the moment. Naruto nodded. I see. I figured as much. My research on it has come to dead end. Barely anything was known about it. The fox, however, did. He still refuses to tell me how exactly he knows how human seals work and how to destroy them. For what reason, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of things he refuses to tell me, so it's really not that big of a deal. At least to me anyhow. The seal is gone, now. Who exactly put the seal on you? And that, Ka-san, is the million ryu question. We don't know. But we do know when it was put on me, though. The Uchiha matriarch raised an eyebrow. When, pray tell, was that? The day I was born, Naruto revealed with narrowed eyes. Her eyes nearly bulged out of her socket in sheer surprise. But that can't be. Mikoto protested. There's no way in hell Minato-kun would have let anyone get that close to Naruto-kun to put that seal on him. He would have slaughtered them in a heartbeat. Unless. Wait a minute. Naruto-kun's seal restricted your ability to think and reason, correct? She deduced based off the naming alone. Naruto nodded slowly, wondering where she was going with this. And when the fox destroyed it, somehow you felt free as if everything was being released all at once? She asked. Naruto bobbed his head in the affirmative. a bit creeped out at her intuition. Mikoto's eyes narrowed just slightly. So that's it. That's why he unlocked the first stage of the Namikaze clan's natural abilities so young. The seal had suppressed his abnormal nervous system and cognitive abilities for so long that when it released, his bloodline must have activated automatically, jump-starting the process a bit prematurely. But the question is, we put it on him in the first place? For what purpose, though? Obviously the seal was meant to suppress his heritage beautif, she thought, frustrated. I see. Very well, then, I'll look into it for you, Naruto-kun. I'll try to find out more about it. Whatever I know you will know. He smiled brightly and hugged his surrogate mother in thanks, which she happily returned. All right, you know what you have to do. Tell them. I know they'll understand, she assured. I'll be waiting, here. Naruto grinned and said a short goodbye to his mother and jumped out of the hospital window in search of his two best friends. Mikoto blinked, again. She then palmed her face. Don't even use the damn door, she shook her head. Just like his father in so many ways, she said absent-mindedly, while skyline from her view. X0. Elsewhere in Konoha, the bewhiskered Jinchuriki was jumping from rooftop to rooftop in search of his raven and pink-haired best friends. So far he wasn't having much luck. Damn, it's the evening and I still can't find you two, he growled in frustration until it hit him. He stopped on a building and slapped himself for his short-sightedness. How the fuck could I forget about the first jutsu we learned, he groaned before crouching and touching the ground with his right index finger. He closed his eyes and then uttered, Chakra Hankyuryai. His control over the technique had improved leaps and bounds over the past year, and as such, he sent a echolocation web within a 1500-meter radius. His eyes opened suddenly as if his eyes honed in on where he needed to be. Found you, the blonde immediately sped out to that destination as he followed the echolocation of their chakra signatures. He found both of them doing a light spar in a training area that reminded him of the estate grounds. Landing in the clearing in a crouch, Naruto made his presence to the two known. They immediately stopped their spar upon sight of him. Naruto. Sasuke uttered incredulously. Whoa, how did you find us? Naruto smirked. The Hanyuti, he told him as if it was the obvious thing in the world. He huffed. Figures. Naruto then got a serious look on his face. But, that aside, I have to tell you two something. Sakura immediately looked alarmed. Is it about Mikoto-sensei? She cried out, fearing the worst. Chuckling, he shook his head in the negative. He motioned for them to sit down and they complied, while he did the same. He took in a deep breath and decided to lead into and go in. Do you guys remember what happened 10 years ago, October 10th, to the village? Sasuke frowned. Yeah, it was the night that the nine-tailed demon fox attacked the village and slaughtered thousands, he answered, wondering where Naruto was going with this. Yeah, and the fox would have destroyed the village had it not been for the Yondaime Hokage defeating it, at the cost of his own life, Sakura added on. Naruto, they told us this at the academy. What does this have to do with anything? Because what they told us at the academy was a complete lie. A lie, they both uttered simultaneously, taken back completely. Yes, a lie. While it was not a complete lie, it was one nonetheless. The nine-tailed fox was one on the 9 Bijou, and the most powerful of them all. Even as powerful as the fourth Hokage was, even he would fail in trying to slay a being like the fox. So he, instead of killing it, he sealed it up. Both of their eyes widened. So if he sealed it, then that would mean. Yes. The fox is still alive and well, Naruto finished. They sat in silence, unable to say anything. Wait. What the hell does that have to do with you? Sasuke inquired, confused at both how this related to Naruto and how he knew such information in the first place. Naruto nodded. You see, Bijou are special. You can't just seal them anywhere. They'd likely break free from the seals and rampage all over again. What was Nietitus a Jinchuriki, human sacrifice? Sakura said to herself as she translated the word aloud. Yes, because that's exactly what it is, a living human sacrifice to keep a powerful beast at bay. Now you all know when I turned 9 last year, right? Yeah, October 10. Sakura stopped dead in her tracks as she stared at her blonde friend's neutral face with complete and total shock. Why you? She stuttered out. You're the one the Yondaime sealed the fox into? Rather than answer her, Naruto stood up and lifted his shirt. He concentrated some chakra into his navel and the seal appeared in all its intricate glory. I see now, it all makes sense. Why sometimes I notice the villagers either glaring or ignoring your presence. Some I even overhear even making snide remarks. Now I understand. They blame you for what happened, don't they? Sasuke said solemnly. Yeah. It's unfortunate why I've always been alone for as long as I could remember. They shunned Maynard me. Treated me like an outcast. All because of something I had no say in. There was a pregnant silence. Well, you know what, Naruto-kun? Quite frankly, I couldn't care less. To me you're still Naruto. You just happen to have a giant fox stuck inside you. I don't care either. You're still my best friend, Sasuke told him with a smile. The blonde was a bit taken back. Just like that? It doesn't matter. Just like that, Sakura assured him, smiling. We're not like those ignorant villagers. We've grown to know you well over the past year. Yes, it's a bit to take in, but frankly you're still you. Naruto grinned. You guys really are the best friends a guy could ever ask for, he told them sincerely. Heh, the feeling's mutual, Naruto. Trust me, Sasuke added. There was a brief silence yet again as the three stared off in the distance. Hey guys, how about a rematch? Every shinobi for themselves? Naruto suggested. Any bets? Yeah. Loser buys dinner for an entire week, Naruto grinned as he jumped up and fell back into a stance with his kodachi. Oh, you're so on. Sakura agreed, pulling her staff out. Sasuke smirked and pulled out his Kusarigama. The three friends were spread out in a triangle. They collectively smirked and the trio clashed. They were unaware of a small reptilian silhouette watching their every move with keen interest. Training Ground 33, 3 years later, 0645 hours, Training Ground 33 was one of the more secluded training areas in the Leaf Village and, hence its name, the 33rd built since the early days of the village's existence. Since it was one of the more recently built training environments, it was much more unique in its design and layout. It consisted of a combination of simulated desert, forest, and mountain terrain along with a lake that was 4 times the size of the lake in the Uchiha clan's estate and twice as deep. The only reason it didn't have an Arctic simulation was simply due to how difficult and expensive such an environment would be to maintain along with the rest of the 3. Today, however, the area looked practically unrecognizable. Trees were snapped at their bases, the ground was scorched with obvious remnants of Katan Jutsu, the rocky terrain littered with slash marks and craters that bottomed out at nearly 15 feet deep and 10 feet wide. Some of the hills themselves seemed to be split completely in half, some in a clear and precise manner and others in a more rugged way. All in all, it looked as if the Shinigami himself had come from the depths of hell and waged war in the mortal plane. Standing in the median of the devastated training ground was a prepubescent male holding a katana in his hand in a familiar stance, knees bent, shoulder length apart, with his guard inward above his chest with the blade outward and his right elbow sticking out. The youth wore black sandals, with white bandages around his shins, all black slightly baggy pants with outward, orange stripes on either pant leg. A thin tight-fitting orange short-sleeve undershirt came out of the sleeveless, semi-loose black shirt. To complete the outfit, a non-metal headband that adorned his forehead came down to the center of his back as well as having a sheath for his sword on his backside. The youth had spiky blonde hair, like in his younger days, but the most drastic difference was that he had bangs on both sides of his face that met down about halfway, towards his cheek. The bangs were not as long as his father's, which was still unknown to him of course, but close enough where a fair comparison could have been made. The blonde stood at a height of 5 feet and 3 inches, which was pretty impressive for someone his age. Indeed, Uzumaki Naruto had grown physically, mentally, and as a shinobi. His eyes were closed as he listened in as hard as he could for any sudden movements. He didn't bother using the chakra Hankyurai, as he wanted to rely on his natural instincts, reflexes, and raw skill. Speaking of his reflexes, they had grown considerably sharper over the past 3 years, both in part due to his training and in another in natural augmentation. He was reacting to things on a superhuman level, even by shinobi standards, mind you, sometimes both consciously and subconsciously. If his body thought he was in any sort of danger, it would, quite literally, start moving on its own and seek to neutralize the threat almost instantaneously. It was unnerving and a bit annoying to say the least, for the Jinchuriki. Sometimes, he could control it just fine relatively speaking, and on certain days it would feel as if his entire system went haywire and his entire body felt like it lit aflame from the inside as he started reacting to the most mundane of things beyond his control, such as catching a fly as it tried to zoom past his friends and mother minding its own business. A need to constantly test his skills at dodging just so his body could feel an adrenaline rush as if it needed one to justify having his nerves feel on fire, gripping their hands almost instantly when he felt as if he was about to be touched, and other numerous, miscellaneous factors. It was during these times where he'd be bedridden, in excruciating amounts of pain as he could barely function. Asking the fox just what the hell was happening to his body gave him no real answers, but the vulpine Biju did have a theory. He suspected that his neural dendrites were being superconductively fibered by an unknown process throughout the entirety of his central nervous system. Therefore, his reflexes, according to the fox's rough estimate, were increased nearly 300% faster than normal humans, and it was likely that the number went even higher in combat situations when his adrenaline started running extremely high. He asked his mom about it and she agreed with the nine-tailed vulpine as it made the most sense to her. He had accepted that as the logical conclusion. However, it wasn't all bad, as Naruto's unique abilities came with some rather positive side effects that even Mikoto didn't see coming, though, in hindsight, she probably should have. His eyesight, memory, and knack for tactics and strategy received a sharp boost. Naruto already had perfect eyesight, but now it was beyond the above standard 2010. Now, it was still 2010 in terms of distance of object relative to his position, but he didn't have any of the blind spots the human eye had that were filled in by the human brain, nor did it ever lose focus. In normal humans, if they looked at an object at an extreme proximity, the object would begin to blur as the eye focused more on the background than the foreground, aka the object. This wasn't the case at all for Naruto. An object that was even mere centimeters away from his eyes would always remain in perfect focus and clarity. It was akin to taking a picture with a high-end, expensive digital camera and seeing all the details even when you zoomed in. He could practically see the interwoven threads in his mother's jounin vest if he focused his sight hard enough. As far as his memory capabilities went, Naruto could honest to the gods say he had a genuine eidetic memory on par with his best friend using his Sharingan. He could glance at a piece of intelligence, for a few seconds at best, destroy it, and was able to picture and recall the information with absolutely flawless detail and precision at a moment's notice, even days after it was destroyed, and he never even consciously thought about the piece of intel. In truth, the only advantage Sasuke had over him with his Sharingan was the inherent, precognitive function that allowed him to read the moves of his opponents with better accuracy. That, and Sasuke hadn't unlocked the third Tomo on his Sharingan to give him such an advantage. So, on that front, they were about dead even. The last of his fortunate side effects were his increased reliance on analysis and fighting cognitively. Okay, we've been at this for at least a half hour, taking turns at being double-teamed by the other two. It's my turn, now, Naruto thought to himself as he assessed the situation in his mind, while keeping his senses sharp for any premature attack. I could use the Henkyurai to locate them and attack with brute force, the bewhiskered Jinchuriki briefly considered before dismissing it almost outright. Not had it be too obvious. They'd sense me tracking them and adjust their attack plan, taking advantage of such an obvious ploy and frontal assault. Granted, I'm practically a codifier of successful frontal assaults, but I'm cautious and plan ahead before I do. I know that, and so do they. Know if I were Sasuke or Sakura-chan, what would I do, knowing how all of this? Wow, of course. Bewilderment dawned upon his features as he suddenly opened his eyes. A barrage of fireballs rained down on his position at high speeds, to which Naruto clucked his teeth and dashed out of the way in a single linear direction to the left, leaving a very distinct bluish blur in his wake, and he dodged them all effortlessly as they scorched the earth into nothingness. Sasuke smirked as he landed in front of the blonde about 20 meters away, with his double-bladed Kusarigama in his hands. Like his bewhiskered best friend, he, too, had changed considerably over the last 3 years. His raven-colored hair was longer, and he wore a short-sleeved black shirt with his family's crest on his back, with a gray long-sleeved shirt, with khaki cargo shorts with pockets on each thigh, a belt that had a pouch on the right side, along with a kunai holster on his right leg. He was 5 feet and 1 inch, shorter than Naruto by a noticeable margin. His weapon had changed, too. The Uchiha Scion had asked Muramasa to upgrade it, over a year ago. Now, instead of 1 sickle and chain, he had 2 sickles that were double-bladed for quadruple the devastation. "You've gotten pretty damn good at that technique you created, Naruto," Sasuke praised as he spun his Kusarigama like helicopters. He had his Sharingan flared and leering cautiously at him. Naruto returned his grin. "Damn right. Ibitsumi, distorted step, is pretty damn good for dodging and closing distances," the blonde began before he used his created technique to dash forward to appear behind the Uchiha, just like this. Naruto attempted for a speedy slash at Sasuke's back, which, surprising the blonde, actually connected. His eyes immediately went wide, knowing something was off. The blonde's suspicions proved correct when Sasuke turned into a pile of cherry blossom petals. His eyes widened completely. Genjutsu and substitution all in one. He alarmingly dissected, as he sheathed his katana and did the tiger seal. "Kai!" he shouted, and the cherry blossoms vanished soon thereafter. "Suetun, Mizurappa, water release, wild water wave," he heard a familiar voice behind him. Knowing what that jutsu would do to him, he used Ibitsumi on pure reflex alone into a random direction. "Wrong move, Naruto-kun," he heard that same voice from behind again. The blonde ninja's eyes widened again, as he turned around only to see Sakura right in the general area he had flashed toward. She didn't even give him a chance to dodge as she unleashed the full fury of her technique the very nanosecond he turned around to face her. Caught completely and utterly off guard, the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox was shot completely backward, toward the lake in a moderate amount of pain due to the nature of the water technique itself and Sakura's affinity for it. He backflipped and skidded across the water, before stopping and standing completely still on top of it. His 2 friends appeared in front of him, the 12-year-old standing afloat as well. "Damn! How did you know where I'd be after I used my technique, Sakura-chan?" "Hell, even I didn't know. My body reacted on its own," he admitted with a twinge of annoyance at not having complete control over his own impulses. Sakura smiled at the blonde. Like the other 2, she had changed as well. Her hair was cut short to medium length that came down to her shoulders. She was tall, 5 feet even to be precise, taller than even Ino, and had a very lean athletic build, which clearly showed where her priorities were, unlike the vast majority of the females in her class. She wore blue sandals, brown pants that stopped below her knees, a kunai holster on her right thigh, and a maroon-colored semi-long-sleeved shirt. Not one to forget her favorite color, she had a pink sash around her waist that was comparable in size to the sashes worn by the Shugenin Jinishi, 12 gentleman guardian ninja, that protected the fire daimyo. Her staff was in her sheath, still on her lower backside horizontally. It wasn't drawn because she had no use for it at the moment. I didn't, really, she uttered, which surprised both Sasuke and Naruto, well, more so the latter. I made a genjutsu for you to hear me call the attack in one area and simply took a gamble that your body would react on its own and move you to a spot by the lake, and lo and behold. I hit the jackpot. She grinned. You're not the only one who has luck on your side, Naruto-kun, she sweetly chimed with a sly grin. I see. So, she's taking advantage of my body's involuntary reactions, Naruto analyzed and reflected within his head. Damn it. It's both a blessing and a curse for someone who knows me well. Then again, she's been training with me for the past 4 years, so it's hard not to pick up on my idiosyncrasies, and she, for a lack of a better word, guessed where my Ibitsumi would take me. But, even still, it doesn't make it any less annoying. Undoubtedly, there are shinobi out there who could probably see the slight differences in my reaction time, whether it is conscious or subconscious, and adjust their tactics accordingly. Ever since he had completed the creation of Ibitsumi a year ago, his neurons and synapses had started to use the high-speed movement technique as a subconscious defense mechanism to dodge incoming attacks where it knew Naruto wouldn't have enough time to make a conscious decision on what to do within the time frame of being hit. It was almost as if Naruto's entire neural network was, quite literally, sapient and alive. Oh, really, Sakura-chan? Naruto inquired, getting into a taijutsu stance, which the others mirrored, although with minor differences to suit their own particular style and personal taste. Yeah, really, she smugly replied with a smirk. Naruto spread through hand seals quickly, but Sasuke's Sharingan showed exactly what seals were being used. Sakura. A wall, now. Sasuke cried as he spun his Kusarigama and aimed it at his cerulean-eyed friend. Sakura didn't need to be told twice, trusting the raven-haired Uchiha's judgment call. Futon, Detapa, wind release, great breakthrough. Naruto called out, blowing a massive gust of wind in a tunnel shape, blowing the blades of Sasuke's weapon back toward him and slightly parting the lake as it sped through toward the two shinobi. The rosette-haired Kunoichi was already making seals for a defensive technique. Suetun, Suijin Hiki, water release, water encampment wall. A small cylinder-shaped fortress of water surrounded both her and Sasuke, protecting them from Naruto's attack, if only barely. The blonde had put a considerable amount of chakra into the attack, and the gales didn't seem to let up in their onslaught. Damn. When did he learn how to use this technique to this level of proficiency? Sakura wondered aloud as she struggled to hold her Suetun technique. Naruto's wind jutsu violently rocked the waves beneath their feet, and they fought hard to stay afloat, constantly adjusting the output of chakra beneath their feet to properly stay on top of the water's surface. Sasuke grimaced, putting his weapon away. I'm not too sure. It was time to go to work. All right, new plan of attack. I'm going to prepare a katan jutsu, but you need to let the wall down exactly when I tell you to. Okay? She nodded. Just whatever you do, do it fast, because we're going to be blown away if you fail, she reminded him over the train-like roar. He grunted, but said nothing further. He took a deep breath and went through the seals, preparing the necessary chakra. His onyx eyes made contact with her jade. Now, he roared, as she let the barrier down, and he sent his fury. Katan, Gakakyu no Jutsu, fire release, grand fireball technique. A large fireball erupted from his mouth with tremendous force. Now that he was older and much more skilled, this conflagration was double the size of what it used to be when his mother first taught him the technique 3 years ago. Adding to the fact that it had a completely one-sided duel with a futon technique, while Naruto was in for a world of hurt if it connected. Unfortunately, or fortunately depending on how you looked at it, Naruto would never find out, as before the wind-enhanced fireball could hit him, a 50-foot wall of water that cancelled out the techniques utterly stopped it. All 3 of the shinobi eyes went completely wide as the wall destroyed without waving back down, making it rain, so to speak, on them for about 30 seconds. Just what the hell do you 3 think you're doing? Came the voice of an all-too-familiar female. Mikoto uncloaked herself after using her Maisegakure no Jutsu, chameleon technique, her arms crossed with a frown marring her facial features. She hadn't changed much, if at all. She still looked essentially the same and wore her Jounin vest and Konoha Shinobi standard gear. The Uchiha matriarch was standing on top of the water just like the rest of the trio. Damn, I didn't even sense her. That technique is something else, Naruto thought in awe and wonder. Well, Kaa-san, graduation exams were today and we just thought we'd get a bit of a warm-up, he sheepishly explained, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Her eye twitched. A warm-up? You call nearly destroying the entire training ground a warm-up? Had I not known any better, I thought this place would be remnants of a battle from a shinobi world war, she chastised in irritation. Hey, guess we did get a little carried away, Sasuke confessed, sharing Naruto's nervous demeanor. Yeah, a bit too carried away, Mikoto grunted with a sigh, before softening a bit. This action caused the Golden Trio to visibly relax. It's nearly 0700 in the morning and you guys are out here training as if you were in the forest of death. Not to mention that the Genin exams are today in the next 2 hours. She critically eyed the 3 children before her in the midst of her scolding. Oh, come on, Kaa-san. Naruto pleaded. You and I know damn well we could have passed the Genin exam a long time ago had you not ordered us to stay the whole 4 years, he pointed out. His dark and jade-eyed friends nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. Even with some of the reforms, the academy is still pretty much a complete joke. A fair point you make, Naruto-kun, Mikoto conceded, but, that being said, was it really necessary to wreck the whole training ground? I understand you 3 are at the level of a Tokubetsu Jounin, but for the love of the gods, show some restraint. Understand? They all sighed and simply bobbed their heads, not really in the mood to argue, anymore. She returned the gesture and motioned for them to follow her as she walked back toward the shoreline. Naruto spun his katana and sheathed it on his back. Sasuke folded the blades of his dual-bladed Kusarigama inward and put it away, too. Naruto had to whistle at all the destruction they caused. Heh, I wonder do we have insurance? He jokingly asked, earning chuckles from his friends and a withering glare from his surrogate mother. All right, you 3 need to head back toward the estate so you can shower and have a proper breakfast. You'd better pray that you all have enough chakra to pass the exam, Mikoto sternly intoned, still firmly in what the 3 assassins had dubbed mom mode. Come on, Kaa-san. Sasuke protested, groaning. You're doing it again. The Uchiha widow sighed and shook her head, before smiling. Sorry you guys know that, no matter how strong or grown-up you get, I'll always be your mother. I don't care if you're 50, and I'm in my 90s. They gave a grateful smile as they all gave her a group hug, catching her slightly off guard and she nearly lost her footing. Hey, you guys. I don't mind the embrace, but you guys are near my height now, she reminded them, laughing a bit. Hey. I got a half-inch on you at least, Kaa-san, the tallest of the triad mock protested. She gave him a grin and kissed his forehead affectionately, much to his embarrassment. Hey. Don't do that, he pouted, protruding his lower lip out. That only earned him a giggle from his mother and snickers from the other 2. Granted, she did it to Sasuke, too, on occasion, but Naruto was twice as more likely to be on the receiving end. With a final laugh, she let go of the 3. All right, you guys, do what you need to do around the village. I should have breakfast ready in about an hour, MK? We'll be back home in an hour, promise, Sakura promised with a thumbs up. Mikoto gave the 3 a final wave before vanishing in a puff of white smoke. Naruto sighed the moment she left. Ugh, I love the woman to death, but man, can she be overprotective at times. That's our Kaa-san for you, Naruto-kun, Sakura sweetly chimed as she began to walk with her 2 best friends on either side of her. I suppose so, he reluctantly agreed with another sigh. Heh, look on the bright side, Sasuke noted. Today, we'll finally be official genin of Konoha and go on real missions. Time to put all the skills Ka-san has taught us to the test. He then surveyed the damaged training ground. His astonishment reflected in the low whistle that soon followed. A bunch of 12-year-olds had managed to do this? Granted, this was Naruto, and Sakura and his doing, but even still, the amount of collateral damage they made was the last thing on his mind as they were doing an intense warm-up. Heh, got to agree with you there, Naruto concurred. One thing I'm glad we really won't have to worry about is, due to reforms, we won't run into the problem of idiotic team placements that make no logical sense. Ugh, don't fucking remind me, Sakura spat in disgust. Swearing became a much bigger habit now than it was when she was 9. Granted, her mouth was nowhere near to the potty as her two companions, but it was still a noteworthy subtle change in her personality over the past 3 years. Whose bright idea was it to think that having the worst student paired with the best student was ideal and in no shape or form would immediately and totally backfire? That's asinine on so many levels, it's ridiculous. They headed out toward the village, still talking amongst themselves. Yeah, no doubt about it, that was a much-needed improvement, along with other things such as longer taijutsu period sessions, advanced survival training, extensive topography lessons. If I didn't know any better, I'd say they were preparing us for, Sasuke started to say jokingly before he was interrupted by Naruto. War, Naruto interjected, his voice cold, calculating, and his eyes narrowed a bit. The Uchiha heir and the rosette-haired girl picked up on this immediately and got serious. Their Jinchuriki friend was in one of those moods. What's going on in your head, Naruto-kun? Sakura grimly asked, all pretenses and joking casted away in an instant. Everything's now starting to become a bit clearer. The announcement by Iruka-sensei of changes. At the academy, our new subject matter, and new tactics, he calmly stated as the gears started turning rapidly in his head. The blue-eyed preteen closed his eyes and placed his right index and middle fingers on his forehead together. Both his friends knew exactly what that meant. Naruto was accessing his eidetic memory from 3 years ago to piece everything together. February 4 days after Ka-san gets out of the hospital. Fine, we continue to go back to the academy while she's bedridden. Naruto recited his memory in perfect detail, with bits and pieces to his friends as a way to somewhat get to the point. His eyes were still closed as if he were watching a movie in his head and he was using a skip or fast-forward remote on his brain to get to the important details within the confines of his memories. Iruka-sensei comes toward us in the morning, tells us Hokage-sama has a few changes for the state of the academy. The class seemingly is uncaring, but there's an undercurrent of interest. Initially, we aren't that suspicious due to the reforms being things we had already been taught months earlier. Naruto clenched his shut eyes even harder, as if he was struggling to look for any hidden clues. Something doesn't add up in my Mindy. Decide to do my own investigating. I go to the library. There's a news scroll that captures my eye immediately. The headline reads, Revolution in Kyomogakure, Hidden Cloud under New Leadership. I take it and read the article within. He trailed off as he strained his mind. Sakura frowned a bit and gently walked toward him and soothed him by touching his hand that was on his forehead. Then, what, Naruto-kun? What did it say, exactly? She asked, knowing that Naruto could, quite literally, recite an entire chapter of a novel he'd read, with perfect accuracy, down to the adverbs, articles, and adjectives used in the individual sentences. This should be no different. A small vein appeared on the side of his forehead as he struggled to remember. Something ultranationalist taking over. Reikage dead Jinchuriki. Isu isolation ideology inauguration speech. Bow before them endured tyranny. Ugh. Naruto groaned out as he held his head in frustration in a slight headache that was forming. Damn it, why can't I remember? He growled in contempt. Relax, kid, the Kyuubi laid in his head. Your eidetic memory probably wasn't as developed back then as it is now. You sure as hell aren't going to remember with such detailed accuracy, when at the time when said details happened, your brain wasn't processing the information and storing it in a huge databank to recall and analyze at a moment's notice. You only discovered it a year ago. The fact that you can remember even some of what you read is a miracle in and of itself. Calming down a bit, Naruto sighed. Yeah, I guess you're right, Naruto agreed, disappointment laced within his voice. Talking to the fox again? Sasuke dully deduced, as if it was the most normal thing in the world for a guy to speak to a giant 15-story tall nine-tailed fox trapped permanently in his gut. Got it in one, Naruto admitted. Sakura shook her head. I don't know how you do it. Talk to him aloud when you're around us or Ka-san, but out in public, you two could be having a philosophical debate mentally for all we know, and we'd be none the wiser. It's because I'm just that awesome, Sakura-chan, he retorted with a sly, foxy grin. She rolled her eyes playfully and poked him in the chest. Well, why don't you beat Mr. Awesome, and pick up some milk on the way back? I noticed we were out this morning when I went to the fridge for some yogurt. He grunted, hating being the designated errand boy. Ugh, fine, Sakura-chan. I will. I need to look into something, anyhow. I'll see you guys at breakfast, okay? Just don't get lost on your way back, Sasuke smirked, obviously referencing an incident from the past. Shut the fuck up, Sasuke, Naruto indignantly replied, that particular incident being a sore spot. He only grinned in return, which Naruto simply scowled and flickered away courtesy of the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique. Shaking her head she turned to the Uchiha. You're never going to let him live that one down, are you? Not a fucking chance. Short. Simple. Direct answer. She rolled her eyes. She would never understand boys and their damned prides. Come on. Let's get back. Right, Sasuke agreed before they, too, vanished from the training ground using the same jutsu Naruto used seconds earlier. X0. X, Uchiha Estate. 1 hour later, both the pink-haired Haruno and Uchiha both sat down at the kitchen table freshly showered and with a clean set of clothes. They realized they smelled pretty badly after their intense training session this morning and each opted to shower the moment they got to the house. Considering how huge the estate was and how many people had once lived here 3 years ago, there were plenty of bathrooms to choose, where the two could have the privacy they desired. Mikoto set a plate of rice balls in front of both of them and frowned. Where's Naruto-kun? She inquired, crossing her arms, her standard trademark, clearly not happy at her son not being punctual, a critical skill in their systematic world of assassins and mercenaries by another name. Sakura shook her head, taking a polite bite of her onigiri. I'm not sure, Ka-san. He said he had to look into something in the village and I told him to pick up some milk from the dairy, she replied, shrugging. I'm not sure what could be taking him so long, unless he's preoccupied with whatever he needed to look into. Mikoto sat down with her 2 students-turned-surrogate children, clearly interested. Is that so? She asked semi-rhetorically. Any idea of what he was trying to look into? Well, we were jokingly talking about the reforms the Academy made a couple years ago and I said a sentence that triggered Naruto's eidetic memory, Sasuke explained. However, he couldn't remember it all, presumably because it was too far back before he gained the ability a year ago. At least, that's what I'm guessing. I'm sure the Kyuubi told him that, too. Mikoto sighed. I don't know if I'll ever get used to the fact that my son talks regularly with a giant fox. One that attacked the village, at that. Hey, he and Naruto-kun have a pretty complex relationship. Nearly went ballistic on us, when we called him an it. Sakura shuddered at that particular memory. That was a particular pet peeve for him and it pissed off the blonde to no end. Mikoto heaved a long sigh. I guess you're right. It still seems weird to me, even 3 years after the fact. A pensive silence permeated the room as the three said nothing and ate slowly without uttering a single word for the next 5 minutes or so. All 3 of them perked up simultaneously, sensing a familiar chakra signature and an audible noise that the door in the other room had opened. So, now he shows up. Finally, Mikoto huffed, crossing her arms for the umpteenth time. Strange-wise Naruto-kun using the front door. He usually just uses either Shunshin or Ibitsumi to flicker or dash in here. Sakura thought in wonder. She soon got her answer. Naruto walked through the doorway, his eyes practically glued to a news scroll. Judging by its appearance, it had to be a few years old at least. He had it held in a certain way where he could hold it in one hand, read a significant amount of information, and hold a full-gallon carton of fresh milk in the other hand. "Hey, Kaa-san, Sakura-chan, Sasuke," he greeted, walking past them completely to the fridge, not even glancing at them a single time. Opening the refrigerator, he unceremoniously tossed the carton in it, knowing it'd be fine. He sat down at the table and unraveled the scroll even further to spread across his lap, ignoring the stares he received from his surrogate family. Naruto?" Sasuke asked a bit cautiously, not sure how to react to the Jinchuriki's odd behavior. "You okay, bro?" Naruto looked up in slight confusion, before his mind finally processed what he just said. "Oh, yeah, I am," he assured, before looking down again, scratching his chin in wonder, his eyes running across the page at lightning speeds. "This article, Thuffet, intrigues me." He turned to Mikoto. "Kaa-san, what do you know about the Cloud Village's ultranationalist party?" he asked in wonder. Because based on this news article, the reforms at the academy, increased lessons on topography of mountainous regions and how to fight in them, it seems to me that Hokage-sama is making subtle changes to prepare us for a future conflict with Kyomogakure. Mikoto looked at him seriously as she sat her tea down. "I see. So you've finally figured it out." "Figured it out? You mean you knew?" Naruto stood at a loss for words. Sasuke and Sakura preferred to stay silent, not knowing enough information to make a firm statement one way or the other. "Well, I can't say I know for sure, seeing as how I didn't hear it from the horse's mouth. That being said, when I heard about it, I quickly put two and two together. I didn't tell you all at the time because I felt it was irrelevant and wanted you to figure it out on your own." "Which you did," she added with a smile. "I see. Did you read up on any of the details regarding the coup d'état that overthrew the Killer Dynasty?" Naruto inquired to his mother, hoping she could fill in some gaps. "No, I didn't. Like I said, I wasn't really interested in the finer details. For one, I was recovering in the hospital at the time, and two, I had you three to focus on. You all take priority even if we have a bunch of genocidal, warmongering sociopaths running a major hidden village." "Genocidal?" Sakura asked. "Warmongering?" Sasuke blinked for good measure, too. "She's referring to the ultranationalist party. They're known to be the extreme of the extreme, and are considered the most brutal organization on the continent. They idolize the Shodai Reikage and his idea of conquest and natural-born citizens of Kyomogakure being superior to everyone else, and as such, they believe they hold a manifest destiny belief of spreading their culture and way of life to the rest of us. The party is highly militaristic in tone, and some would compare it to Europa, the continent west of the elemental nations. The populace seemingly sided with them, and they overthrew the Reikage in a coup 3 years ago," Naruto explained from what he knew and studied. "Wow," Sasuke whistled. "These guys sound like real trouble. I mean, to overthrow the Killer Dynasty? They'd have to have some seriously powerful shinobi to pull that off. The Sandaime Reikage and Yondaime Reikage were truly powerful shinobi that even his clan once respected, even in spite of their arrogance." Mikoto nodded. "Seems Hideyoshi was more powerful than I gave him credit for. I thought that fool's dream to be Reikage and conquer Kyumo was a lost cause." Naruto's cerulean eyes narrowed a bit. "Hideyoshi? That's not the name of the current Reikage, Kaa-san," he pointed out, crossing his arms. Mikoto blinked several times in confusion. "Wait, what? How the hell not? He's leaded those monsters for the past 20 years or so. How the hell is he not the Reikage? A figurehead in his place?" Although the latter question was pretty far-fetched in hindsight, it was the only logical conclusion that she could come to. "No, It just says that the ascended Godame Rakich's name was, he began before double-checking the article again, just in case he misread something. Aisu, upon hearing that name, Mikoto froze completely on the spot as her hands started to sweat, a sight that only her blonde son's razor-sharp vision could actually see. What did you say? Mikoto stuttered, as her heart began beating rapidly. Aisu, Naruto repeated a bit slowly, his eyes narrowing a bit. Mikoto frowned a bit and detachedly looked off into space. Her 3 surrogate children looked at each other with worry tracing their features. Kasani, something wrong? Sasuke quietly asked, not knowing what to think. The Uchiha matriarch said nothing for a few seconds, before standing up. No. Nothing's wrong, she lied, which wasn't lost on the trio at all. I just need to get some fresh air. Finish your breakfast and head on to the academy. I need to be alone for a bit. Her tone brooked no room for arguing. The 3 of them were smart enough to not press her on the issue and let it be. Mikoto walked outside to the estate's courtyard without another word. The golden trio looked at each other. Later? Sakura asked. Later, the other 2 confirmed with a nod. Man, that was weird, just hearing that guy's name sent Ka-san in a bad mood. Really think the guy's that bad if just hearing what he's called causes her to not want to be in the same room again, Fox? Naruto asked his Vulpine tenant via telepathic link. No, I think it goes much deeper than that. Something's definitely off here, though. That much, I can assure you. I wouldn't worry about it for now. You have an exam you need to pass. Naruto smiled. All right. Fine. I won't worry about it. By the way, as a way to celebrate when I graduate, I'll find a fox so you can stretch your legs, he promised. Thank the fucking gods. Holy shit, I know it's only been 2 weeks since I last got out, but you have no idea what it feels like to be stuck behind a cage in a sewer, the monster Biju groaned. Naruto shook his head and gulped down 2 rice balls. Ah, man. That hit the spot. He patted his stomach in satisfaction that his appetite had been sustained. Last one to the academy is a rotten egg. Naruto exclaimed without warning with a mischievous grin, before vanishing using the body flicker technique. Ugh. Naruto-kun. You fucking cheater. Sakura shrieked out before running out the door as she made a ram seal and she vanished in a small whirlwind of cherry blossom petals. Sasuke shook his head. Naruto was going to win, head start or not. Ironically, despite how competitive they were, he knew that Naruto was going to win contests of speed 10 out of 10 times, guaranteed. The blonde was leagues faster than the 2 of them combined. Adding in his mysterious bloodline, it only further cemented how much a lost cause it was. Sakura, however, still always tried, even as futile as it was. With a shake of his head again, he sucked his teeth and casually walked out of the door and jumped to the rooftops, preferring to head there in a more classic, and good old days way. Uchiha Estate courtyard, a shaken Mikoto sluggishly made her way in the courtyard toward somewhere. She honestly didn't know or couldn't care less where her body directed her. All that was repeating was that name in her head, Aisu. 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 A tear fell down her right cheek. There's just no way it can be you. Mikoto solemnly reflected as her heart clenched in hurt and regret. She collapsed to her knees. There's just no way it has to be a coincidence, she tried to convince herself. It had to be. Names, like anything, were common, right? But, somehow, deep within her heart, Mikoto knew there was no mistaking it. It can't bite, just can't. Mikoto screamed to the heavens, breathing in and out while her body shuddered. They told me you died. Aisu-kun, she uttered the name with the unmistakable tone of forlorn fondness. X0. X, Konoha Ninja Academy, 0900 hours, the Konoha Academy was buzzing with activity as students from all 4 grade levels were excited as they were entering the coveted school. Naruto appeared in a flash, a bluish blur in his wake, nearby a less crowded area in the academy. The reasoning was, even now, the trio wanted to mask just how massive the gap was between them and everyone else in their graduating class. Although he somehow suspected that the Hokage knew, he didn't want them to know he had created a technique all on his own. It would have caused too much questioning and unneeded bullshit that the blonde most definitely did not want to put up with. Besides, they hadn't graduated, yet, and their mother's rule of, no showing advanced techniques still technically applied. After they received their headbands, everything after that was fair game. Naruto grinned as he saw a flourishing whirlwind of cherry blossom petals swirl in a circular dome shape about 3 meters away from him. The tornado-like petal storm stopped to reveal a pink-haired kunoichi who looked severely irritated and annoyed. "Love your unique Shunshin no Jutsu, Sakura-chan. The swirling effect with the petals is pretty kick-ass," Naruto complimented with a smirk, both in genuine admiration and in an attempt to calm the Haruno. While she was secretly flattered that Naruto praised her unique form of the body flicker technique, also known as the Hanakairi Shunshin, flower-dispersing body flicker, she was still highly annoyed, and by the gods, she was going to let the blonde know it. "Flattery will get you nowhere, Naruto-kun," Sakura intoned, her voice traced with irritation. "You clearly got a head start." She pouted, crossing her arms as if she were saying, "What do you have to say for yourself?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. "You really think if it were opposite, that it would have made a difference?" Naruto retorted. To outside parties, it would have sounded arrogant, but Sakura knew better. The blonde was simply stating undeniable facts. He would have won regardless or not if Sakura had started first or they had started at the same time. Sakura sighed in defeat. "I guess not," she conceded with a grumble. "But hell, it can't hurt to try, can it?" All she got was a simple shrug from the leader of the Golden Trio. "By the way, where's Sasuke?" Naruto asked as he scanned around for him. "Right here," a familiar voice called out before dropping down in front of them. "I took the classic way here." "Jumping on the rooftops?" Naruto deduced, with a raised eyebrow. "Why? You know you can get here much faster than that, by alternate methods." "Yeah, but still, I didn't want to get here too early." "Beats being bugged by our fangirls," Sasuke shuddered. Sakura moaned. "Ugh. I can't stand them. Even after I put them in their place, they seem to not want to back down, thinking I'm out to steal you guys from them." The 2 boys were completely silent and expressionless, choosing not to comment one way or the other. "Let's go inside," Naruto suggested, effectively ignoring what Sakura said. Sasuke gave a verbally concurred agreement with his blonde friend, and the duo left their only female friend very confused. What just happened?" A perplexed Sakura thought to herself in worry. "Is it just me or do those 2 avoid talking about their fangirls' jealousy of me?" This wasn't the first time this had happened, and each time, Sakura grew more suspicious of their conspicuous behavior. She didn't know what exactly the central reasoning behind it was, but she did know one thing: she, herself, had something to do with it. For all her intelligence, even Sakura should have seen something that was so utterly simple and obvious. Inside, the entirety of the classes was abuzz with activity. Seeing as this was graduation day, the instructors were far more lenient with what they allowed the inexperienced assassins to do on a whim. The reforms and changes to the curriculum had installed more discipline, yes, but at their core, they were children who liked to have a good time. "Yo, Sasuke, Naruto." Kiba, the Inazuka clan heir, grinned, greeting the Uchiha and Uzumaki. Like all of the members of the canine-based clan, he had his dog with him at all times, the bleached-colored Akamaru perking on top of his head. Although still a bit hot-headed like the early days of the academy, he had mellowed out somewhat. "What's up, Kiba, Akamaru?" Naruto returned the greeting, while Sasuke just nodded. Just ready to take this exam and start being a real shinobi and going on real missions, the Inuzuka heir happily exclaimed, gusto coating every word that rolled out. How do you think we feel? We've been ready to leave for 4 years. Sasuke replied indignantly. Kiba almost assuredly thought he was exaggerating, however, he really wasn't. They could have been genin 3 years ago, had it not been for Mikoto forcing them to stay all 4 years. Heh, Naruto huffed, a bit bemused by Sasuke's clear irritation at having to wait. He accepted and stopped caring about it a long time ago. In fact, he actually kind of liked it. If they had graduated early, he'd had no doubt that he'd still be in the process of creating Ibitsumi. I wonder who'll be top grad. Naruto absent-mindedly wondered aloud, a bit more to himself than anyone else. Oh, can it, Naruto? Everyone knows it's going to be you, Sasuke, or Sakura, came the dry and snarky reply from Shikamaru. Naruto turned to him, who looked at him with a bored expression as he was sitting by Chuji, a portly fellow who munched on some potato chips. Come on, Shikamaru. Everyone knows that if you tried, your scores could be as high, if not higher than ours, he countered. Shikamaru grunted. That'd be far too troublesome, he lazily retorted, his eyes cast down in a drag. His eyes then turned to Naruto with half-seriousness. Besides we know you three are simply holding back, he told him, barely above a whisper. Naruto raised an eyebrow before the Nara explained. I'm not stupid, you all are holding back and you don't want everyone to know it, just yet. Hell, I bet you guys could beat our instructors if need be. The two boys nodded, silently. It was true. They had surpassed Iruka and his other instructors long ago. He was almost positive they didn't suspect a thing, as they never, ever used any elemental ninjutsu in the presence of others outside of their family. As far they knew, they were simply exceptionally talented students not seen since the likes of the Yondaime Hokage, the White Fang, and the Sannin. There you guys are, Sakura huffed out as she lagged from the rear, interrupting whatever reply either male was going to say. Guys kind of just left me, she resentfully added. Oizuri, Sakura. Sasuke sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. She shook her head and took a seat, as did the two of them beside her. The three best friends enjoyed the comfortable silence among them, waiting patiently for their head instructor to arrive. They didn't have to wait long. Before they knew it, the dolphin-named instructor had opened the door to the class and crossed the threshold. Within 5 seconds the class had quieted down into total silence and gave him their undivided attention. Iruka smiled and nodded approvingly. Wow, these kids sure have come a long way since we started. Such discipline. Hokage-sama's reforms couldn't have come at a better time. The changes are like day and night. He shook his head a bit, before he got too lost in his thoughts. The head instructor cleared his throat before he began. First off, I'd like to congratulate you all on making it this far. Although you haven't graduated yet, this kind of field isn't for the light-hearted or the faint. Not everyone can be a shinobi. Even with the reforms made by Hokage-sama to increase standards all around, you still stuck through it through thick and thin. Naruto had to inwardly snort. Please. This was nothing compared to what Ka-san put us through. All three of us could likely solo the entire class at the same time and assuredly completely stomp them if we could work as a team. Is that a bit of arrogance I hear in your head, kid? The fox snickered, bemusement lining his voice. Naruto snorted a bit. You and I both know it's the truth. The fox shook his head. That may be true, but you still have a long way to go. You can't get complacent and think it's going to stay that way forever. I've seen this side of you, kid, and frankly, I don't like it. In some ways you're honestly starting to remind me of the Uchiha clan. Even though the blonde couldn't see him, he could practically feel the frown the fox would have if he could. He sighed. All right, I get it. I won't get complacent. I'll simply train to make sure I'm the strongest shinobi I can be. The Kyuubi smirked. Much better. So, now, we'll call your name and you'll be proceeded into the back room where you'll take your graduation test and receive your official Konoha headband. Irika beamed proudly at the 30-plus individuals in the room. He then grinned. So who's going to go first? Half of the students in the entire room raised their hands, eager to graduate and get the hell out of the academy. The Golden Triad, however, surprisingly didn't. I'm showing off, Naruto declared randomly. I'm graduating and this guy is not going to give a single fuck this day. I've held back long enough. Sakura sighed, rolling her eyes and leaning back in her seat. Just don't do anything too flashy. Sasuke shrugged. Meh, do what you want. I don't care as long as I pass with honors. We're probably going to have to share the Rookie of the Year spot, anyhow. Naruto agreed. Probably. But for now we wait. The tallest of the trio closed his eyes as he began to meditate and practice using the chakra Hankyurai. Although he, like the other two, had extremely high proficiency with it, practice never hurt anyone. It kept his skills as a sensor sharp. One by one, he could feel the fluctuations of chakra, as young students officially became full-fledged shinobi. Finally, he heard his name get called. Well, I guess that's me, Naruto grinned as he hopped out of his seat. Wait, Naruto-kun, Sakura called out to him before he went down the steps. He turned back to her with a raised brow. What is it, Sakura-chan? The blonde inquired. She smiled at him and moved closer to him. She brought her lips to the side of his face for a quick peck on his cheek. Naruto's eyes widened a bit in sheer surprise and shock. His cheeks turned bright pink as some in the class had their jaws on the floor. That was for luck, she grinned slyly at him. Thanks, he stuttered out, still completely stunned by what his rosette-haired friend had done. He rubbed his cheeks as he walked down towards the back room where the exam was being handed. Sakura smiled and turned to Sasuke, who was giving her an emotionless stare. She flinched a bit, seeing the look in his eyes. He wasn't just angry, he was completely furious. Why did you do that, Sakura? He practically spat, biting back the venom he wanted to spew out at the 12-year-old girl. Sakura narrowed her eyes. It's just like I said, it was for good luck, Sasuke-kun, she defended. What the hell is the matter with you? He clenched his fists under the table, trying his best to calm down. It's nothing, Sakura, he scowled in barely hidden contempt, turning away from her. Sasuke-kun, look at me, she commanded, which was ignored. Sakura grunted in annoyance and gently turned his head toward her, soothing his cheeks. His eyes were hardened, but had a noticeable layer of softness in them, causing her to smile. Guess he wasn't as angry as she thought. Please, don't be mad at me, Sasuke-kun, she pleaded, staring directly in his onyx orbs. I know that was out of the blue, but, if it makes you feel better. She kissed his cheek as well. That was for your luck and so you'd feel better. The Uchiha almost turned a brighter red than even Naruto. A slow smile crept on his face, his mood instantly turning better. Thanks, Sakura, he thanked. She only grinned back at him. Inside the testing room, unaware of the transgression that occurred on the outside with his two friends, Naruto entered the room with an air of complete confidence in his abilities. Walking in the center of the room, Irika and his blue-haired assistant Mizuki were sitting behind a desk. Irika-sensei, Mizuki-sensei, Naruto acknowledged with a curt nod, which was returned by both senior instructors. Irika cleared his throat. Well, Naruto, looks like this is finally it, eh? Yep, Naruto agreed, grinning. So that's our final exam, sensei? He finally asked, staring at the brunette intently. Irika gave a half-smile, half-smirk. Naruto's razor-sharp vision caught the gesture. The blonde only raised a brow ever so slightly to indicate that he had his interest piqued. Well, Naruto, it's actually quite simple, Irika admitted. You simply have to perform the academy jutsu in a manner we deem proficient, he explained to a gaping blonde. You're kidding me, right? That's it? For years and that's our exam? Naruto had barely bit back his complete disgust. So much for reforms. Mizuki actually smirked. Don't be so sure, Naruto. There's always more to everything than meets the eye, he cryptically remarked. The Uzumaki narrowed his eyes ever so slightly, as his tactical mind started to analyze what the blue-haired instructor just uttered. More to it than meets the eye. Does that mean there's another part of the test we don't know about? No, that can't be right. Everyone that went before me passed the exam. Granted, if they couldn't do these 3 jutsu by now, they should have washed out a long time ago. Surely with all the reforms they wouldn't make it this easy on graduation day. I mean, this exam would basically guarantee that everyone who stepped foot in this room would pass and then dash. Naruto's thoughts were cut off as realization dawned on him like the bright and early sun. That's it. It isn't the real test. The real test comes with our sensei. Naruto then smirked a bit. I see, Mizuki-sensei, he replied, giving them a knowing look with a twinge of smug. Iruka smiled. So you figured it out, Naruto? Heh, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You're one of a kind, kid, the Chunin thought before speaking yet again. I don't mean to rush you, Naruto, but we do have others waiting, he reminded him. The Jinchuriki gave a fox-like grin. Okay, Iruka-sensei, but do you mind if I do all 3 techniques at once? He innocently asked. Iruka raised both his eyebrows and turned to Mizuki. The blue-haired instructor simply shrugged, indicating he didn't care. Sure, he approved, not knowing where the blonde was going with this. Naruto smirked before he held the index and middle fingers of both hands in a cross-shaped position. Both Chunin's eyes widened, as realization dawned on them what jutsu the blonde was about to do. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shadow Clone Technique. Naruto cried, as a perfect replica of himself appeared a few meters beside him in a plume of white smoke. Not even wasting a single second, the blonde did the tiger seal. Henge no Jutsu, Transformation Technique, he cried out again, turning into a flawless version of the dolphin-named instructor. Naruto's doppelganger, mimicking the ultra-fast reflexes and reaction speed of the original, reached into the holsters on his legs to throw a plethora of shuriken and kunai at the transformed ninja. They hit dead on target, Naruto's body going limp, and vanishing to reveal a log instead with all the weapons embedded into its bark. All of this happened in the time span of approximately 3:45 seconds. The log vanished in plume of smoke, leaving a smirking Naruto in its stead. So do I pass, he rhetorically quipped. The jaws of both instructors were on the floor. Yumo of Course, Iruka stuttered out, his mind still barely registering what he saw. He can perform the Kage Bunshin Jutsu. His precision, timing, and execution were completely flawless. Just what the hell have you been teaching him, Mikoto-san? He inwardly queried with a gulp. Here you go, Naruto, Iruka smiled before tossing him a Hitai 8 or headband. Naruto caught it with utter ease and returned the smile. 100 points. Perfect score. The blonde had to grin at that. Thank you both, Iruka-sensei, Mizuki-sensei. It was an honor, he declared with a formal bow. Iruka, and surprisingly, Mizuki returned the gesture. Well, as best as one could while sitting. Congratulations on becoming an official genin of the Hidden Leaf, the brunette instructor congratulated. Naruto put the Hitai 8 on his forehead, replacing the headband already on that region of his face. They had to admit, it looked damn good on the Jinchuriki. Be here tomorrow morning, same time for jounin assignments, Mizuki ordered. Naruto nodded cordially and left the room with a huge smile on his face. Sakura immediately tackled him and hugged, almost making him lose his footing. You're officially a ninja, Naruto-kun, she squealed with joy. Naruto laughed heartily and returned the pink-haired girl's embrace. You knew I'd pass, he pointed out, letting her go. She grinned at him. I know, she admitted. But still, you're a genin now. Heh, I guess I am, huh, he huffed out, with a small chuckle. What's the exam? Sasuke asked, walking towards the two. He gave a silent nod to his best friend turned brother. It was the Uchiha Scion's way of congratulating him. It's ridiculously easy, but there's more to it than meets the eye, he intoned in the same manner Mizuki did. They both gave him confused stares before he waved them off. You'll see when you take it, I promise, he assured. They looked at each other before shrugging in acceptance. The beamed expression Naruto had on his face simply wouldn't go away. He couldn't wait till he got home to show his mother. X0. Hokage's tower, 1015 hours, impressive, isn't he? Hiruzen smirked a bit as he blew out a puff of smoke from his nostrils. The third fire shadow had taken upon himself to watch the genin exams using his crystal ball. Foremost, it was to see the fruits of the reforms he had decreed 3 years earlier, and secondarily it was to see how well the Golden Trio had progressed in strength. I'd have to agree, Hokage-sama, came the voice of the man in front of the Hokage. He was tall, lean, and built male with silver hair that seemed to defy gravity. The man wore standard Konoha Shinobi gear, but the most noteworthy was his Hitayate covered his left eye, similar to an eye patch used by pirates around the world. Naruto sure is impressive. He sure has grown from the last time I saw him. Hard to believe this kid used to be a notorious prankster. The boy sure has mellowed out, quite a bit, Kakashi, Hiruzen noted, dismissing the image in his crystal ball with a wave of his hand, effectively, spying on the academy no more. I can see that, Hokage-sama, the newly named Kakashi, agreed. I'm guessing you're putting him and his companions on the same team? Hiruzen set his pipe down and nodded in confirmation. Yes. Ordinarily, they likely would have been placed on separate teams due to how, Hiruzen grimaced a bit. Unbalanced, it would be for the top 3 students to be on the same genin squad. Hindsight's kicking in, sir. Kakashi quipped humorously. The Hokage grunted, not amused. It has, he confirmed. I was foolish to think that pairing students off in a brusque way could backfire in a plethora of ways. Particularly, the tradition of pairing the worst-ranked student with the rookie of the year. Kakashi gave a subtle, sidelong look as his eye held some form of desolation. He knew how that was all too well. Besides, I couldn't, in good conscience, separate the 3 anyway. They work well together. We'll see, Kakashi spoke with his arbitrary skepticism. Tomorrow will be their true test. I'll get to see how good the Golden Trio really are. Hiruzen refused to smirk, as he feared he would have busted into uncontrollable laughter. You have absolutely no idea, Kakashi. You're in for one hell of a surprise tomorrow, he thought amused. You will. I have no doubt they'll pass, but with you as their sensei, who knows? The Hokage shrugged. He inwardly smirked, deviously. The Sandaime knew they'd pass the bell test with flying colors tomorrow without a single doubt in his mind, even in spite of Kakashi. However, he just needed say the right words for Jounin to let his guard down and underestimate the 3. It was the Hokage's subtle way of punishing him for being tardy in the past. It was an opportunity he just couldn't pass up. The Cyclopean Jounin nodded and bowed. Hiruzen was about to dismiss him before he heard a knock on the door to enter his office. Kakashi started to make his way towards the door after the Sarutobi clan head gave him a curt nod of dismissal. Come in, he permitted as the door opened to reveal Mikoto Uchiha with a yellow new scroll in her hand. Her expression was neutral, but the 2 seasoned veterans could see the seething rage behind her eyes and the tight clenching of the scroll. Mikoto-san, Kakashi greeted formally to the widow, bobbing his head towards her in respect. She returned the gesture out of politeness, but her eyes were still cold as a glacier and she was leering at the Hokage with the venom of a cobra. Figuring now was a good time for him to exit stage left, the copy ninja crossed the threshold of the office and shut the door behind him. Mikoto-chan, Hiruzen began, interlocking his fingers and resting his elbows on his desk. He was well aware of the waves of anger and subtle killer intent coming off of her, but chose not to comment in favor of a neutral and professional tone. Somehow, he knew that probably wouldn't last long, if at all. "What brings you here?" "What brings me, here you ask?" She laughed sarcastically, causing Hiruzen to frown. "What brings me here?" she shouted, not even trying to hide her ire. She skillfully tossed the new scroll in such a way that it opened up across the entire length of his desk. "Explain that to me, Hokage-sama." Although a bit confused by her sudden and, truthfully, out of nowhere, outburst, the Fire Shadow looked down at the headline and his eyes went wide. "Mikoto-chan, he tried to explain before he was cut off. "You lied to me," she accused, her fists clenched so tightly that Hiruzen thought they might bleed. "All those nights I was depressed. Where I couldn't sleep, feeling guilty because I couldn't do a goddamn thing, and then lo and behold I find out this." Mikoto quite frankly didn't care that she was openly disrespecting a legendary shinobi. Considering the magnitude of what the Sarutobi clan head had done, it was the last thing on her mind. Hiruzen gave a downcast look. "I'm sorry, Mikoto-chan," he told her genuinely. "I never wanted this to happen. I've always did the best for Konoha," and he trailed off, not sure where to go from there. "You call practically erasing someone from the village as if they never existed the best thing for Konoha," she roared. Aisu-kun was dash, he slammed his fist on his desk in fury, fighting fire with fire. "I know what the hell Aisu was. But I didn't have a choice after what he did." Mikoto's eyes narrowed. "Need I remind you, Hokage-sama, that you are partly responsible for how he turned out the way he did? You were the one who was supposed to be the light when he was always constantly being overshadowed, and you abandoned him when he needed you the most," she retorted, making emphasis on the fact that they were his mistakes. He couldn't deny any of those facts, but truthfully, it wasn't his entire fault. "I was in a near uncompromising situation, Mikoto. I did what I had to do," he reasoned, although, inwardly he wasn't so sure himself. "So, why did you tell me that he died then after that incident?" she asked the million Ryu question. "I loved him, Hokage-sama." By now, she was inhaling deeply as tears fell down her eyes as memories of her one-sided affection for the brunette shinobi resurfaced in her mind. "I know," Hiruzen admitted. "I didn't know what to do. He ran away, and considering what he was, I couldn't let his betrayal tarnish the village's name." "So you told me he died and went out of your way to erase traces of his existence from the village?" Mikoto couldn't just help but to laugh at the situation. "Wow, and let me guess, you had help from the Yamanaka clan too, huh?" His silence told her all that she needed to know, and she shook her head. "And look where it gets you, 20 years later, Hokage-sama. Aisu-kun has changed completely, partly due to you and his family, and now he's the leader of the most brutal organization in the entire continent. Funny, you always told Aisu-kun that he'd be destined to change the world. The things you've done, Hokage-sama, I honestly am not sure how you even live with yourself. First, Aisu-kun, then Orochimaru, and now this." It was a low blow, and she knew it, but the Fire Shadow needed to be hammered in of just how monumental his sins were. "You have absolutely no idea, Mikoto-chan," he thought bitterly and solemnly. She turned away from him in disgust. "Don't get me wrong, Hokage-sama, I respect your rank and will continue to fight for the village as I always have, but what you did was disgraceful, and I don't care if you're the Hokage or not, it's the honest to the God's truth." "I'm not going to tell anyone," she told him, allaying him of his concern. "Because the truth will come out, and I guarantee it will be from Aisu-kun himself. You already have enough to deal with, so I'll spare you that much," she said bitterly, before narrowing her eyes again. "But you will tell me the entire truth one day. When I mean the entire truth, I mean everything. The background details, secrets, threads that were woven before it happened. All of it. It wasn't a request. It was an outright demand." "I will," Hiruzen promised, without hesitation. If this was any other person, he would have outright refused and rebuked them for making a demand of that magnitude about an S-class secret that even Danzo himself was completely unaware of. In some twisted sort of way, he was indirectly responsible for breaking her heart twice. He owed the Uchiha too much to refuse. Mikoto breathed out with a sigh and nodded in thanks. She bowed respectfully and then dismissed herself from the room. Orochimaru Itachi, I sutrally you three are a monument to all of my sins, the wizened Hokage thought in a defeated manner. He pulled back the drawer to his left, yet again. It was a bottle of sake that was completely full. Hiruzen didn't waste a single second gulping down its contents to take his desires away. X0. X, Hokage Monument, 1,200 hours, on top of the famed monument that had the faces of all its leaders carved into the mountainside, stood a lone figure. A red robe with a hood covered gold and black armor plating that held together by two belts. A golden mouthpiece for the bottom portion of his face was covered and a white opera mask the top. His aqua-blue eyes pierced through the eyelids of the mask. After finally traveling for so long, I finally reached the perpetuated village hidden in the leaves, he intoned sadistically. His style of voice had a synthetic tone to it, almost as if he were a machine that had a voice echoed, slightly. I must say, I'm not impressed, he remarked indignantly, crossing his arms. He walked back toward the base of the mountain as a dark aura surrounded him and blood-red patterns started to appear on his plated arm. He did several hand motions before calling out, Renkinjutsu, Tentikura, alchemic art, heavenly void net, he called out as a square-shaped form of energy appeared before him. Inside the square, the same bald-headed man in a white suit, he had spoken to after the coup in the hidden cloud appeared, although, obviously, he wasn't physically there, it was just a projection. Ah, my regent. You've finally made it to the elemental nations, I see, the man observed. Of course, Ashtir. These shinobi are more primitive than even I thought, the masked man spat in disgust and contempt. Of course, they wouldn't have the technological wonders of those of Western civilization. Ashtir replied. Though I must say, I'm impressed that the Tentikura could reach me, even though I'm thousands of miles away. The masked man's eyes narrowed. I'm an alchemic master, you fool. Don't forget where your place is on the totem pole, Ashtir, he warned, dangerously. I apologize, my regent, he apologized fearfully. The regent of the mask simply snarled, neither denying nor accepting the apology. How goes the construction of the Deadless, he inquired, changing the subject completely. It's progressing smoothly as it can. It's an enormous investment, along with building its sister ships, Atlas and Olympus, Ashtir replied. For now, though, we can't send many more of our troops safely past the frontier regions that separate Europa and the elemental nations. Even with our advanced technology and knowledge of alchemy, the geological structures and climate is too unstable for us to send massive amounts of our men and material without heavy losses. You'll have to make do with a few hundred at a time, if that every 3 months, 2 at best. The masked man nodded, having expecting this. Very well. I shall make do with the men that I brought with me. They'll be enough. We have at least 3 years before Isu starts his little war. What will you do in the meantime? I told you that Naruto would be the catalyst as we make our existence known to the world. Although his face was covered, the bald alchemist just knew that he was smirking. But first I need to visit a certain snake. He has something I need and I will get it. With or without his cooperation. Ashtir smiled deviously. I understand, my regent. I'll check back in for a progress update within the week. For now, continue the construction of those ships as planned. Without even saying a farewell, the masked man cut off the connection towards the western continent. He looked back towards the village with a vicious smile behind his mask. Soon, this village along with the rest of these primitive animals would feel the entire wrath of the lords of alchemy. Turning on his heel, he surrounded himself in a shadowy aura and vanished from sight. Not a single individual would have ever known he was there. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you want early updates, check out Patreon. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.